Welcome to this episode on the Health and Happiness Show, where it's my mission to change your mindset so that you can live a healthy and happier life. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's go. Hey guys, it's Ollie here, and welcome back to another episode on the Health and Happiness Show, where today I'm joined by an incredibly special guest. He is an award-winning entrepreneur, author of the best-selling book, Back Yourself, founder of the Super Self Summit, CEO of Tide 55, gym owner, and TEDx speaker, who is on a mission to help business owners make more money, get their time back, and have more fun so they can live and leave a legacy. With his long list of business accolades and legacy-driven vision, I just had to get this guest on the show today, where I hope to tap into his mindset and learn more about this man and where his drive comes from. It is therefore with great pleasure and excitement that I welcome to the show, Tommy Gentleman. Tommy, how are you, my friend?
Ollie, thank you for having me. And do you know what? That was an amazing introduction. I'm going to have to steal that sound clip there because that's actually better than I could do myself. So thank you. And it's great to be here.
That's kind of you to say, and you've been very kind and generous with your time today, which for me is a great opener. Having watched your TED Talk, which to the listener, please actually pause this podcast, go onto YouTube and watch this man's TED Talk because it will blow you away. But for me, where you're talking about time and really about leaving a legacy, it was beautiful. It was amazing. So I have to therefore open up, what does time sort of mean to you? And I know that's a very broad question, but I know time has a specific meaning to you. So what is that?
Yeah, it is a broad question, but it's a very, very special one. And the thing about time is that we all share it. We can't change it. And none of us know how much of it we've got. And so my relationship with time is that time is the currency of life. It's what we spend and how we spend it that's important. And we don't know how much we've got in our account, if that makes sense. So it is very, very important and special. And some people might hear that and think that the message is to live life to the full and, live life as if it's your last day and stuff. But I also think that that's two extremes. I think there's a sweet spot, and that sweet spot is to be as authentic as you can be within your words, your work, and your why, to leave a legacy through just being here and being present and being the person that you were destined to be, if that makes sense and it's not too out there.
How did you learn this currency? How did you learn about the value of time?
I think so it's a great question, Ollie. And the answer to this question, I would really encourage the listener to think about how this transfers into their own life. Because I feel like we've all been through at least one thing in our lives which has rocked us and shown us just how vulnerable we are as people and how each of us is so fragile in our existence. And what I'm trying to say here is that as soon as you experience how fragile life is and you are involved in a death of a family member or a friend, which ultimately is we've got to talk about contrast here. To live life to the full, we have to respect death to the full. That's the contrast to life. And so I think for me, it was actually experiencing the sudden passing away of my younger brother 5 days before his 14th birthday that allowed me to really appreciate, and it's a strange word to use, but it really did within time, to appreciate how precious time really is. And I want to go back to what I said at the start here, which is that each person that's listening to this, you, the listener, you have also had something in your life that has the potential to show you this. But maybe you're not letting that in just now due to fear or the pain of the occasion. But I really want you to know that you can transfer and transform that pain into strength when you're able to have the courage to look into it. So that's kind of a long answer, but it does bring some context as to why I have this position in my life and why I appreciate time so much and make such a big deal of time being the currency of life, because it was me and my younger brother growing up, just him and I. And I see that as I very early on made this distinction that I saw it as a 50% chance that it could have been me. He passed away from a heart condition that was unforeseen, that he didn't know he had, nobody knew he had. And I saw that as a close miss for me. I could have been the one who died, which gave me the opportunity to really appreciate how valuable time is. And the thing that pulled me out of that dark patch, which the listener, I'm sure you're wondering if you've been through something, how that can happen, is I swapped our roles, and I thought, if it was me and I could send him one message, if he was the one that was still here and I was the one that wasn't here, and I could send him one message, the message I would send would be, you better live for both of us now. And so I flipped it and I thought, well, that's what he'd say to me too. And so I took that as a new philosophy in my life and in my mindset deeply, viscerally, that I was no longer just doing Tommy. I was living for him as well. I was living for Jamie as well. So I've empowered myself to do that. And 11 years on almost, it's now something I don't actually think about consciously. It's just become part of my everyday existence and philosophy and subconscious programming. So yeah, time, man, it's everything.
What's your relationship with death then? Having gone through one of the worst imaginable things, to lose a family member, I can't comprehend. Um, I can only show the highest levels of, condolences for what, you and your family have been through. Um, to have that understanding and to have that appreciation of time, which by the way, extremely resonates with myself. Um, what's your relationship with death? Because the thing with death is, it scares the hell out of so many people. Are you scared of death? Like, what's your relationship with death?
It's a really great question. And when I was younger, I was terrified of dying. I used to cry and wake up in night, and my parents would say, "What's the matter?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't want to die," which I think is quite common as a kid. You start to figure out that there's an end. At some point in your life, probably between the ages of 0 and 7, or more likely sort of 4 to 7, you start to realize that there is an end. You might have a pet that dies, or you might have an elderly relative or something, and God forbid, something else that's more against the circle of life, so to speak. But you soon learn that that's going to happen to you too. And so it's quite a big thing to comprehend. And what we learn is we learn different structures and different ways to make sense of it. And our parents try and teach us the best way, and, our guardians and at school. But I think, again, as an adult, you need to challenge it. You need to challenge it again as an adult. And I think in my early 20s, which would have just been after my brother passed away, until probably 2 years ago, I was not scared of it at all. I'd be like, I don't, it is what it is. If it happens, it happens. I will have no regrets. I actually publicly said a few times in various content videos that I produced that I could die now and it would be terrible. And as I'm floating away from my body, I'd be like, oh, there's so much more I wanted to do, but I feel happy. I feel happy that I can't control the thing that's happened, but at least my family and friends and everyone would have fond memories and lots of things. And I've done as much as I can with my time. But to be honest with you, mate, 2 years ago, I let that slip and I was scared. I was scared because I wasn't living in that sweet spot. And I felt like if I was to die, that I would have regret, and I would be surrounded. I'd be leaving regret because I wasn't necessarily in that sweet spot. And that's terrifying. So it was good for me as a person, Ollie, because it allowed me to not get comfortable on my advice, to actually be like, actually, it's harder than it sounds to have that confidence in life and death. It's really quite difficult for people. But I'd got so far away from that because I was so hardwired to be living in that sweet spot that I needed to taste what it's like to fall out of it again. And I can honestly say that I'm nearly back there. There's still a little bit more I need to do. I need to improve the amount of time that I give my parents, for example. I'm not comfortable with that, but I know that. And so I'm honest about that within myself. So, there's these little things we've got to be honest about with ourselves and have that level of self-awareness to know that those things are unresolved, because eventually there won't be enough time either way, and regret really is the only real lose that we can experience in life. Everything else is either out of our control or it's a learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, it's It's so powerful what you just said there, and there's actually so many different angles I can go with this. Um, I guess for someone who, the intro sells itself there, like you're a busy guy, you've achieved so much. Like, how do you therefore manage time? And because finding that sweet spot isn't easy, it's pretty hard,
No.
right?
Yeah.
And amongst all of the different businesses that you have, and how do you manage that time, because time would be perhaps up there with one of the biggest excuses. I haven't got time for this. And I very much believe that time is just a trade-off of different priorities. And
Yes.
like, you can't be somewhere else in this podcast right now.
Yes.
So how do you manage your time?
Not very well is the honest answer. Um, Look, by no means am I like someone who has mastered this. I respect it. I respect it, and I live my life with that in mind, and that forms my sweet spot. But I'm always turning up late to stuff. I'm always leaving things way longer than they need to be, and these are all skills that can be improved. Um, so how do I manage my time? I would love to give you a strategy that I use, but I'm probably one to be better off listening to a strategy than actually giving one. But what I can add is, when you said about not having enough time and priorities, I'm totally with you on that one. I think there's two problems for us. Sometimes we overestimate things which are not important, and therefore underestimate things that are important. And that can be one problem why we don't have enough time to do something. But the other side of it is that we say yes to too many things. And I think if you're a giver and you're generally in life someone who likes to help, you can say yes to too much. And sometimes I know that when I've deviated from my sweet spot in particular, I've said yes to too many things and not said yes to the most important things, which I therefore should then have said no to the other things, to give myself more time in where it counts, if that makes sense, with family, with like helping out with people that maybe have done more to help me in the past, and just making that equilibrium, and being less selfish and more giving with that gift of time. And like I said, mate, I'm not sitting here proclaiming to have all the answers, but I'm absolutely confident that it's always a work in progress for everyone, including you, including me, including the listener.
100%, yeah. And I mean, that's a great touching point, because I think most people are selfless, and that's incredible. But you've got to be a little bit selfish, right? You've got to actually remember to put your own health and happiness first as well, because you can put everyone before you, and that's great.
Yeah.
But if, that should never come at the expense of your own health or happiness. So how do we find that, maybe that balance, or rather, for a different direction, that question, how do you practice being selfish in a way that serves you before you do all of your work and serve other people?
It's a trade-off, and there is an element of like the oxygen mask on the airplane philosophy. Put your own oxygen mask on before you help else, otherwise both of you will end up with no oxygen, and you won't be able to help others. So you do need that. And there's another saying goes around, isn't there, which is, you can't pour from an empty cup. All of this is very true, and it helps us to understand what we're trying to say here. But there is a limit to this, and I think that sometimes we can get comfortable with that, and we can use that as an excuse. I do think we need to regularly check into what is being selfish in a good way and what is actually taking advantage. And there is a fine line. Like, I look back at that sweet spot slightly. I was doing too many things that I was telling myself were good for me, when actually it was just because I really enjoyed doing it at the expense of putting other people in stress. Like playing two sports when really I could probably have played one. Because I had two young kids and my time. I'm like, oh, no, I need this because I need this for me. But do you need both? Probably not. This is probably just taking advantage of that philosophy a little bit. So I feel like the key to it is communication with the people around you, because they're the ones that you would have. They're the only reason why you're conscious of this. It's because there's people around you that maybe you need to fit in with their time, you need to trade with them, you need to make it fair or whatever. And if they're important to you, then it's important to have that conversation, to be able to say, look, here's why I need to do this thing, because it will help me feel like this, which then makes it better. what do you need to do as well? Because let's make it, fair. And then the other side of it is to openly ask, am I taking advantage here? Or, how comfortable are you with this? Particularly ship, or, if you're living with your parents, it's just important to take lead on setting the boundaries. And that way there's no surprises and it makes things a lot easier.
I want to go back to the day that you lost your brother.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you said, I'm proud of you, shortly
Yeah.
before he passed away, which again, it even gives me goosebumps now. Just, I can only imagine. And I think knowing that actually people are proud of you is so important, and we don't say it enough to ourselves, to other people. What would be, your proudest achievement in terms of how you spent your lifetime up until this point?
My kids. Because actually there are many ways you can leave a legacy, and each of us are our legacy of our parents and their parents, and the DNA that's passed on through our ancestors. We are literally the physical legacy of those human beings. And so nothing will ever surpass my children as my biggest achievement, because they take, look, mate, from a sort of task management point of view, they take a lot of thinking and they take a lot of energy, and they take a lot of time. And so, like, from a kind of self point of view, it's like something to be proud of that you've got, like, two healthy children and they're nice kids and whatever. But, like, aside from those things, whatever they do in life from now on, I'll always have an input on that because they share my genetics. I'll always be a part of whatever they do. And it's the same with my parents and yours. And so I think that's quite powerful to acknowledge. And nothing that I've done, and I'm honest about this, I've done, like you say, lots of different things, and I've won awards, and I've won a world championship in sport jiu-jitsu, but none of that actually matters. Like, I don't even put it on a pedestal in my life anymore. Like, it's just not like, I take it as, well, yeah, what else would I be doing in my life? And then, doing nothing. I can't compute that. And that's because of the philosophy from losing my brother, of what, well, not losing him. I don't believe you lose anybody, but passing away, that taught me that standard in my life that I would have from that point on.
With all of what you're speaking comes from a place of wisdom and experience. What do you hope to, teach your children? That your proudest achievement. What do you hope to teach them? What do you hope, their life direction goes in? Like, to maybe either carry on your legacy or just to get the most out of life. Like, how do you instill that same level mindset into your children?
First of all, is my sound okay?
Yes. No, you're good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So the first thing is, like, all I ask from, or all I could ever hope for from them to me, is that they always respect me as a human being. And if that's the case, then I've done right by them. Because actually, whatever they achieve, I don't care, as long as they're happy. And I've got no standard or expectation of, like, what they should or shouldn't do in their lives, because that would be regret. And we've talked about this already. If one of my children lives their life because I've suggested they should live it in a certain way, then actually, when we get all of us older, there will be a point in their life where they run out of controlled time and they look at me and go, well, you made me do this. And that causes a problem, and that causes regret. So for me, mate, as long as they are happy, I don't care what they want to do. I really cannot care. If I turn up to go around for dinner, they're one of them's putting on dinner for me and my wife, as old people, and they open the door and their eyes are lit up like they are now at 4 and 1, then I know that they're good, and I don't care about anything else. As long as their eyes are lit up, when you look at your kids' eyes, especially when they're young, if they aren't lit up, then there's something wrong. And either the relationship needs to take another level up in an uncomfortable conversation, or you need to check in on yourself as to what you expect from that human being. So that's all, mate. Just that happy spark in their eyes.
How old are you, Tommy?
I'm 32. I'm 32.
32. So you've got, a nice 60 years
Hope so.
before statistics kick in. How do you hope to spend those next 60 years? What is one or two things that you really hope, you aspire to achieve in that lifetime you have left? And I say that in the context of, your decades.
Yeah, no, I get it. One cool way of looking at it is like, how many summers have you got left? That freaks you out when you think about it like that. And it freaks you out even more when you think about, the relatives that you've got that are maybe a bit older, and you think, how many summers have you got left with them? It's such a weird thing to think about, because years, you get used to that. It's a conditioned word. It's weird. Like, I want to give myself the same advice that I would give to my kids. As long as I'm engaged and I'm not comfortable, but confident that I'm doing something that's stimulating me and improving me as a person, but not stressing out people around me, because that's the lesson that I've learned in missing the sweet spot in the last couple of years. Then I know that I'm doing the right thing, and the thing doesn't actually matter. So that's a philosophy rather than an objective achievement. However, there is something maybe more of an ego move, which I'd like to be able to still do things that I do now, or things that I did in my 20s, in my 40s, in my 50s, in my 60s, in my 70s, and still be like the one that can get away with it. Like, I still want to be able to do that. I want to be able to get a skateboard out when I'm 50. Like, I still want to be able to do that stuff and not be like a cringy old man. Like, that's something that I would like to still be able to do. But yeah, other than that, mate, it's just being happy again, just whatever that happiness points towards.
I love it. I think, Tommy, you've got such a good philosophy on life, and I know that comes from hard times and painful times, but I am a big believer that pain becomes purpose in life and struggle turns into your strength. Before I ask my last question, where can the listeners find out more about you online?
I think with a name like mine, anywhere that you type it in, you'll find something. So it's Tommy Gentleman, and it genuinely is my real name. It was hideous at primary school, but now I'm very happy that it's my real name. So yeah, anywhere that you are, I might be too. Just search for it and say hi.
Tommy, my final question, what is one thing the listeners can do that will have the biggest impact on both their health and happiness?
So one thing, like a practical thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great question. I think where I'm going to go with this one, Ollie, is some people are going to be able to hear it and they're going to be able to nod along and they're going to go, yes. Others are going to go, what do you mean by that? Which is good, because you should look into it and get curious. And then there might be some that go, ugh. And it's you guys that go, ugh, are the ones that need to check in, right? What it is that I'd recommend is to very quickly understand where your ego flares up and how to overcome that, because it will always end in trouble.
I mean, the curiosity's got the better of me. Where has your ego flared up in the past? And what have you learned from that?
It's flared up in the past for me to be the one trying to prove to everyone that I'm good at stuff, which is the real root of it all for ego. It's like, if someone's egotistic or described as that, it's because they know they're good at it. So they're trying to show more people that they're good at it, because that's a very safe space, which is why the ego kicks is safe. It's, well, I know I'm good at this, so I want to show everyone. And actually it causes a bit of a problem around pride. the problem with pride is that you start to protect things when really you should be letting them go, or you should be moving and transitioning in life. And it could be protecting relationships, it could be protecting social status, it could be protecting things that you've built and created that you just don't want to let go. But when the time's right to let go and move on, you have to let go and move on. For the ego, trying to be right, trying to prove to everyone that you're the best, trying to prove that you're the one that can do it, that you're the golden boy, it will always end in trouble.
Tommy, you've quite literally been a gentleman with your time. And guys, until next time, stay healthy, be happy, take care.